Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Srini here, and this is my channel. You can just go ahead and subscribe to it if you're new to this channel and hit the bell to get notifications. So here you'll be getting a lot of free videos on Java, Selenium, Python, robotics process automation, and API automation. And you can email me if you have any queries or if you want me to take any topics. You can surely send me an email. I'll be happy to take a video on that. And in case you have any query, if you want to have any private coaching as such, also you can send me an email for the further inquiries. So let's get started with today's topic. Today's topic is the fifth part in the interview questions for Selenium. This is the last part of it for the Selenium interview. So we have already seen part 1 to part 4 in this tutorial series, and this is going to be the final part. And this will conclude with our Selenium interview questions. So let's get on to the document. So we had already seen till the 18th point in our last tutorial session, right? And now we are just left with few questions, and we are going to see the practical part as well along with the theoretical explanation. So let's get started. The first one is, what is the difference between no such element exception and element not visible exception? So this having a difference here, the meaning of the two. So no such element means that the HTML DOM, right? Whatever the DOM structure of the entire web page is there, current web page is there, that particular DOM does not have, or no such element does not have whatever locator we have mentioned in our script, that particular element is not there. That is the meaning of no such element exception. Means it may have been there in previous occasions whenever you had ran the script, but maybe due to some changes with respect to development or due to some restructural part as a part of the future requirements, that element may have been moved out, or it may have been taken out to some other portion of the page or some other page, right? We don't know what is the actual movement which has happened, but that element is not currently there on the page DOM. That is the meaning of no such element exception. Element not visible exception means what? This means that either the element is not directly visible. So what is the meaning of not directly visible means? Again, it could have two implications. Either it is a part of some frame, either it is a part of some frame. Okay. And as you know, if you have any element as a part of some frame, we have to first switch to that frame, and then we only will be able to interact with the element. So this could be first reason. Second reason could be element is not in visibility range. When I say visibility range, means that it may be at the bottom of the page and we are at the top middle portion of the web page currently is loaded, so we have to scroll down. So scrolling down might be necessary, right? This could be one other reason, right? Sometimes it could also be the case that you may have to use actions class to move to the element, and then further actions may be possible, but this is very less probable in this kind of a scenario, element not visible. So you would often see that the first two reasons are the important reasons why you get element not visible exception. So that answers the 19th question. Let's move on. The next question is, what are the different types of weight in Selenium, right? And explain them. So this is a very important interview question, guys, and you would surely expect a question from the interviewer, especially on these three different types of weight. And they will, of course, ask you to explain with an example which scenario. They will give you a scenario and they will ask you which type of weight is to be used here and why. They will ask you for a justification. So you should be in a position to explain them why are we using this and what is the meaning of each and every weight here. So let's start off. What is implicit weight first, right? So let's get to the practical part here. So what I'll do is that I'll just go to the interview part here, right? I've created a class weights demo so that I can explain to you all in a quicker fashion. Sorry guys. Yeah, so now what we are going to see are three different types of weight. We have already seen the implicit weight a number of times when we have mentioned the before method, or whenever we have mentioned at the initial part of a script, right? We have used the syntax driver manage timeouts implicit weight. Now what is the meaning of this? See, across the entire session of the web application, when a user is interacting with it, right, you would be noticing that some elements take some time to load. So what is implicit wait here, right? Implicit wait means that we are telling to our WebDriver that in the entire session, in between all the steps what we are going to execute in a test case, you would have to wait for at the max 10 seconds in case you are not able to find the element as described in the next step. So I'll just explain you that. Suppose you have got step 1 to step 10, right? There are step 1 to step 10 in for the entire test case. You might be using whatever framework you want to use, right? For the step 1, let's say it could not find the element, so it will maximum wait for 10 seconds. That is the meaning of implicit wait. If here as well it could not get the element, then it will throw you element not visible exception. So till the time this 10 seconds has not lapsed, it will wait. Otherwise, after it's lapsed, it will going to throw you element not visible exception. So this is the meaning of element not visible exception. It will be applicable for each and every step of your entire execution throughout your program, but it will not always wait for 10 seconds. Only if the element isn't found, then it will wait for maximum 10 seconds before throwing element not visible exception. I hope that is clear to all. Yeah. So the next part is that let's come to the next point. What is explicit wait? Explicit wait, as a name suggests, that we are forcing explicitly forcing a wait, okay, forcing a wait for a particular situation. Let's say that you have an application which you know loads kind of in a systematic fashion and consistently at the same amount of time, so you need not worry about that. But there is always one portion of that web page which takes some time to load. It could be some dynamic, or it could take some time because of heavy data being loaded from some external source, right? So in that situation, what we require is that we require for that particular step only to wait explicitly rather than using the implicit wait for a longer time. See, if I make this implicit wait as 40 seconds, right, it is going to wait for 40 seconds maximum in case it does not get the element throughout the execution of the program for each and every step. But why should I put such a high number of weightage time, right? So rather than that, and that too for the entire execution of program, rather than that, I will make it specific for one situation only. That is where explicit wait is used. It is used for putting explicit wait only for a particular situation into perspective, right? So let's see the syntax of a explicit wait. So for explicit wait, we are going to use a class called WebDriver wait. So it is a part of this org OpenQA Selenium support UI. So this is the syntax how we have to instantiate it. WebDriver wait, then say new WebDriver wait, right? And when you do that, you will be asked to give the driver reference variable and the time for which it has to wait. See, I have made it generic now rather than hard coding within the instantiation. I have made it generic to make the user provide us what is the time they want it to wait. So we'll be making it generic, and we can put this method as a part of our utilities class. That is the common utilities which we'll require for any particular execution. We can call this particular method, and it will wait for that much amount of time explicitly. Right. Now, the other thing is that just forget about this for the time being. I'll explain you. So what are we saying here? We are saying that this particular explicit wait has got a method now. If I say dot operator, you can see there are a lot of methods here. So we are going to use this until some particular condition is met. See, predicate is true, means some condition is true. So we have an expected conditions class, and there are a lot of different methods within this class. If you see here, whether the alert is present, whether the element to be selected by this locator, or the element to be clickable by the locator or by the entire web element, right? Clickable means what? The click should be enabled. So the click should be enabled. It is not just like a text. If the click should be enabled, mostly in case of buttons, we will have this particular condition checked to be clickable. To be selected, we'll be using in the case of a checkbox. Whenever we want to check an element, or a radio button, right? We want to check the element or select the element. So that again has got two ways, by locator and web element. Or let's say if you are having frame and you want to check that, okay, is this frame visible in my current web page? Yes, it's available. Then what else we want to do with that? We want to switch to that, right? So we are going to give the locator of the frame, or we can give the number of the frame. As you know, we can switch to a frame using different ways. One is the name of the frame, one is the number of the frame, other is the actual web element of the frame, or we can use the by locator, that is the by class locator. Here we'll be having like driver.find element, and then in the bracket we'll be having this by locator. That is how we are going to do that. In case of web element, directly we are going to pass the web element as the parameter. So there are different methods available within this class, and we are checking here that once this particular condition is met, then you continue further whatever you want to do, because you have already got the element, because we are trying to wait it until a particular condition is met. So in this scenario, we want to wait for an element to be visible. That is why we have used visibility of elements located by. So if I show you through dot operator, see visibility of web element or visibility of element located by, and we can mention by whatever is the value, by.xpath, etc. So here we've used by.xpath, and we are getting the xpath from the user. Or you can directly say visibility element located, and you can mention the web element here. Anything is fine. You pass the web element or you pass the xpath, right? So let's just come back to the original value. So it's going to return us a element. If we do a mouse over here, it is returning a web element. So you can store it in a web element which is to be defined here, right? And now you're going to finally return the element back. So that's why the return type is web element for the explicit wait, right? So explicit wait is going to make for that situation wait explicitly for that much time as given by the user. So it's going to wait for a particular condition to be met, this until condition to be met. This is the predicate condition to be met for this much specified amount of time, whatever the user has passed. And the last type of wait is a fluent wait. So fluent wait is kind of a wait in which we are not only checking for the presence of the element, but that is also happening at a frequency. Means we don't want to make it wait for a specified fixed amount of time, like 30 seconds or 20 seconds like that. We want to check after every small interval of time, is the element visible now or not? If not, again I'll wait, again I'll check after maybe another next interval. So that interval is called the polling interval. So we are going to define it this way. So wait, we are creating an object of wait, and we are instantiating. So wait is an interface. So we are creating the object of wait using this new fluent wait as the class, right, of type web driver, right? So we are creating that, and we have to pass a driver reference variable as the parameter. And then what we are doing, we are polling, means we are checking after every whatever time user is given here. So we might pass here like every 2 seconds or every 1 second or every 0.5 second, whatever we want to be checked, right? So we can check for every 1 second or so whether the element is visible or not. It is going to check in whatever time units we mentioned here. We can make it milliseconds, microseconds, it's our wish. So we can accordingly change this method. And we are going to ignore no such element exception class, because we are checking this at every specified interval. So it is a very high possibility that you may get no such element exception. Why? Because the page may not be completely loaded, and that is why we are using fluent wait to check after a specified interval of time, and then go on doing that process until it has found that. So once it has found that, so once we get this fluent wait here, what we are going to do, we are going to wait until this particular method is met. That is, once we have got the web element, what we are looking for to be present on a web page. So what we are saying here, so it is the syntax of fluent wait that we have to define a function. So we are going to define a function this way inside this until bracket itself, right? This is the syntax how we create, right? If you look at the syntax how we normally create, it will be like this. We are using the same syntax. Only the thing here is that we have mentioned this entire portion within this double parenthesis part. That's the only thing. Nothing to be confused here. So whenever we create a function or any particular object, what we use a new operator, right? On the left hand side is the reference variable. On the right hand side, we have the instantiation part. Similarly, here on the right hand side, if you see, we are having new function and the two types of parameters what we require. So we have a web driver here and we have web element here, right? So we are having it as a method, and whenever we create a method, we always open the curly brace and end the curly brace. We've done the same thing here, no difference at all. Only important thing to know here is that when you create a function, I'll show you that. Let's comment out this part. It's showing an error here. If you comment out this lines, why it is so? Because it is saying you have to implement the inherited abstract method. So when you look at this, right, so we have to implement the inherited abstract method function. So we are using function here, right? Function here is an abstract method. So whenever we are using an abstract method means we have to make or give it a definition. So these are unimplemented methods. We have to give it an implementation. So when I say add unimplemented, it automatically overrides the previous abstract method, and now it has got a definition. You see there is a opening and closing curly brace. And always remember the name of the method should be apply with return type as web element. So that is how, and WebDriver as the parameter. So that is how you have to have the definition of your web element for apply method. Only then it will be considered like an override. If you look at the symbol, it is saying it implements com.google.com.base.function. And another important thing, you have to import com.google.common.base.function and not any other class. So there is a lot of time people get confused here. You have to import this. If you do not import this, you are going to get an error. I'll show you the error. I'll show you why and in which situation people get panicked here. If you just do a mouse over on this, now you see the suggestions there. There are so many suggestions. People often tend to get confused between com.google.common.base and java.util.function. They generally go for this. Now see what happens here. This error from function has gone because you've imported. But until is not be able to proceed further. It's not allowing us to proceed further because it's saying until function super WebDriver in the type wait is not applicable for WebDriver web element, because you are trying to do a mismatch. Here you're using Java util function, and here you're trying to use fluent wait, which is kind of associated with a function of com.google.base.function. So because you've commented out this part and you've imported this one, you're going to land up in this issue. So always remember you have to use com.google.common.base.function, so that error will go away, right? So that is how fluent wait you have to define the new function. You have to give a overriding definition of the web element here, so that I've already given here. So I'm going to delete out this part and I'm going to uncomment out this portion, right? And it shows a symbol of that we have successfully implemented the abstract method, which is apply. So that's all what you need to do. You have already got the element now using the fluent wait. It has waited for that particular condition to be true, that it has found the element, and you are finally returning the element back to your calling method. So then you can continue with your other whatever actions you want to do with that element. So this is how fluent wait method is very useful. It will wait for a specific interval of time and keep on checking that and ignoring no such element exception class, right? So let's go back to our question. So we are now on to the 21st question. What is the difference between get and navigate method? See, both of them are going to achieve one purpose, that is to redirect to a website. But let's understand the subtle difference between the two. See, get means what? So let's say if I say here google.com, this is syntax, right? And if I say driver dot switch to dot navigate, right? And then if I say whatever method I want to use here, right? Navigate. If I use a similar one, the difference between the two is that in this first scenario, you are loading the page for the first time. You're just getting the application loaded for the first time. So getting application loaded for the first time, right? And the last one, switch to navigate, means you are redirecting to this site, with some sessions history in the browser. What do we mean by that? We can move forward or backward in the session history. Already that particular browser may have a forward session, means what particular next page you have loaded, or a backward session, what was the previous page you had loaded. So that is how it has some cookies which are already there. But get means it is the first time you're trying to launch the browser. But both of them are going to launch the same or do the same. It's going to redirect to a site, but the way of doing that is different. It can even have forward done or backward done. But get, you can just launch a website which is done for the first time. That's the difference between the two. You have to explain the same way to the interviewer. Right. Now the next question is, how can you explain or execute multiple test cases in parallel? So this is a very simple thing. For this, we are going to use through testng. So I have already have got a testng.xml. So I'll go back to here. So here you are going to use an attribute called parallel, and you're going to say parallel equal to test. So this is how you're going to execute multiple test cases in parallel. When we say parallel equal to test, means we are going to execute multiple test cases in parallel. When they say multiple methods in parallel, we are going to say this as methods, right? So this is method means what? I'll again explain you. Method means here we have testng1 here. Method means @test. This is a method. Test sample is a method. But if you look at testng.xml, this name equal to test1 is a test case. So when we are saying, so there could be multiple test cases here, right? So let me create one more. This is another test case, right? I can give a name here as test2. Now this can have some other classes within it. Now there is no other class as such in this particular example, because if you see here, I am using a common class which is testng1. But just consider that we had testng demo also. We had another class here, right? So what we can do here, we have testng1. Now let's make this as testng demo, which is again within the same package pkg, right? So in this second test case, test2, we are going to execute testng demo, not testng1. So when we say parallel equal to test, means what? It is going to execute these two test cases in parallel, this one and this one. And when they ask you methods in parallel, means you have to say test method, means we are going to use this method. This is the meaning of test method, @test. So when you have such multiple @test, so let's say we have one more @test, right? We can say description equal to test2, public void test2, right? So this is the meaning of second test case method. This is second test method. So when they say multiple test cases in parallel, you're going to use parallel equal to test. When they say multiple test methods in parallel, methods, when they use, you have to use parallel equal to methods. So that is the meaning of this 22nd test case question. Right? The next one is, what is a base class and what is its usage? So base class is used mostly in a framework. When we create a data-driven framework, keyword-driven or hybrid-driven or any framework for that matter, base class is very useful and powerful because it promotes reusability of the code. Whatever things or code we are going to use in our other test cases or other classes, Java classes, we are going to put the common code. I mean, I'm not talking about the utility methods, but the common things which we would for surely do when we are working with any test case. So I have created a base class template also here. If you look at what it is doing, you'll be like able to understand what is the purpose of this base class. So I have created a method called initialize. It is just going to create a file input stream. And what is that file input stream is having? It is not having anything specific, just the configure properties file. So I'm just ensuring that in a framework, there will be a config properties file, right? So I have all the different variables which have to be used in a config properties file, like the application name, what you're going to launch. It could be browser. You could have a browser like I'm going to use Chrome. Then if it is a Chrome browser, I would need to have the Chrome driver path. So I need not do any hard coding of these kind of values within my code. I'm putting everything in a properties file, and I'm going to use the properties concept of Java to access that particular attribute. So if you look at this initialize method, it is initializing the file input stream, right? It is then creating a variable instance of the properties file, right? So then what we are going to do, we have initiated the file input stream so that it establishes a connection with the file. Now we have instantiated the properties class object as well. And now we are going to load our file input stream. So if you see here, prop dot, and if you see the different methods which are there, I have to load the input stream. And after that, only I can get that specific property from that config properties file. Whatever property I want, I can access that. So I'll create a session separately on this so that it is clear in depth, but just understand that we have to use this properties file concept. Properties, I've created a variable here, and I'm just instantiating that variable in this try block, and then I'm accessing the method to load the file input stream. It will give you a suggestion of FIP, right? Once you have loaded the FIP, it's all set. This initialize method has done its purpose in the base class. It's just basically going to have, right? So that is the meaning of this properties class, right? And if you look at this catch block, it is asking us to forcibly handle two types of catch exceptions. One is file not found exception, and one is input output exception, right? And if you notice here that if I just change the sequence of IO exception to the top, it is going to give me an error. The reason is because it is a parent exception type, because this will automatically handle file not found exception. So this will never be caught, or it is unreachable catch block. So always ensure, if you're having a child and a parent class exception, it should be always that child class exception comes first, then the parent class, like this. Otherwise, you just mention the parent class exception type. Yeah. So that's all about the initialize method. And now we are having another method called get property. So we are going to use this prop.get property, and whatever property we want to read from the properties file, like here we have application, Chrome driver path, or browser. So we are going to get that value from this get property. It's going to return the string value. So in my base class constructor, I'm going to call this initialize method. So it will take care of initializing all of these properties, and so that in my whatever classes are going to inherit it, it just has to directly call this get property method, because it is already initialized whatever file settings we want to from the config properties file. It will just retrieve the value from the properties file. That's all. So here in the Selenium interview 2 to 3, we can simply say extends base class. That's it. So it's going to automatically include whatever we want to as a part of the base class. If you look at this main method, if I just say whatever method I want to invoke here, let's say get property, right? The name of the method is get property. Okay. So since it is inheriting it, so since it is inheriting it, I can simply say get property, mention the property name, and store it in some value here. So what all we have property, let's say we have Chrome driver path. So we can just say Chrome driver path. Okay. And what is the error here? Yeah, so since we are using static method main here, we have to change the get property to also static, because a static method can always access a static method or a static variable. So we have to make this get property also static. So we will make it as static. So it will ask us to make prop also static. So we'll make prop also static. So that is how all of these are interconnected with each other. And now you see we have directly accessed the get property in our child class, which is inheriting the parent class base class. So this is how you're going to use in a framework. These some other classes are going to extend your base class, and you will be able to achieve the code reusability part by not repeating this get property thing again and again. So I hope it is clear to you all. I'm just commenting out this part now. Yeah. The next question is, how do you handle Ajax controls using Selenium, and just explain with some example. So firstly, you need to understand what is Ajax. Ajax is asynchronous Java and XML, right? So here, what happens is that here the thing is that in a particular web page, there are a lot of dynamic elements which are like flashy kind of contents, and they keep appearing after some interval of time, and they take some time to load, or they come abruptly in between. Now there are certain sections of that particular web page which the browser is interacting with the web server, right? And it is getting the response from the web server as well in that particular session, but it is not refreshing the page. Normally when you notice that in a web application, if you try to click on something, or if you are doing some action, generally the page gets refreshed, right? And after that, you are able to see the updated content. But to make it more faster and more efficient, nowadays, whatever different applications you see like Gmail, Facebook, Yahoo, all the different Google applications especially are using this Ajax controls. And why do they do that? They do that to increase the processing speed and make it more faster. So the page does not get refreshed, but you are able to see the updated content with some action being done, right? So that is what is Ajax controls. So for an automation tester to handle something of such a kind of a thing which is happening on a web page is a little difficult or tricky. So how do they do that? They have to first wait for that element to be loaded in that web page, right? After that Ajax action or call has been done, they have to wait for that element to be visible first, and then they can continue with their other steps in the automation script. So in order to achieve that, you can use different types of wait, but the most specific wait which is very much important and suitable for this purpose is explicit wait. Because you explicit wait or a fluent wait, if you want to make it most generic to that particular scenario, you can use fluent wait also, where it is going to check for a frequency of time. And we've already seen what are explicit wait and fluent wait. So you can go across my previous part of this video to understand how this explicit wait is going to be useful. But let's see now in a class. I've just created a Java class here and to explain you all how and where it is useful. So let's see in this scenario. So I have an application here called seleniumeasy.com. It's like a demo website. So let me show you all this website first so that you can understand what is Ajax call. Let me load this. Yeah, so this is like a simple website. If you look at this radio button, it has got two options. If I select mail, if I click on get checked value, so till I don't click on get checked value, there is no text as such appearing on the section, this particular section. If I click on get checked value, you can see this text is appearing. This is via Ajax call. And if you notice here, the entire web page was still, it did not get refreshed, but this particular element or this particular label text got loaded instantly. That is Ajax call. This website is using Ajax call, like how Google, Gmail, or Facebook also does, right? It is using Ajax control. So now I have implemented this test case, and what this test case is doing, I've taken a test ng example. So I am first identifying this entire section of radio buttons demo. You can look at the syntax later on to understand. I've used XPath access method because it was giving more than one element for this particular thing. So I had to use XPath access, right? And I'm using this explicit wait here. If you notice here, I'm using WebDriver wait. I've created a variable of WebDriver wait as a global variable. I'm instantiating it here, giving it driver comma 5. And I'm going to wait for presence of element which is located by what? By this section. Whatever I want to first get loaded completely, radio button demo. Once it is loaded, I then want to click on this mail, right? This selection is done then I want to click on get checked value. But before I click on get checked value, I will of course find out that is there something displayed here. So if you notice here, I'm already finding out this label element first. This is the XPath of the label element. Its class is radio button. But as you see, initially, if you don't do this action, if I refresh the page, let's say, there is nothing here on this section. So initially, if you try to take this XPath and try to get its value, it is going to give you nothing at all. It will be blank. Even if you do trim and whatever you want to do with this get text, right? If nothing is there here, it's completely blank. That will be printed here. Text before will be completely empty. Then we are clicking on the radio button, this radio button, right? That's what we are doing on this particular step. Then we are clicking on the check button, and then we have got the output. So then we are finding out again with that label element 2 that what is the value of this XPath get text, and after doing trim, we don't want spaces there. So we have got the text after, right? And this one I'll come in a bit. Don't worry about this part. And then finally we are closing the driver session. So let's just execute this program now. So it's going to launch the browser and the website. Right? It has selected mail and it has also clicked on that get checked value. If you notice here, it has given text before as null. and text after radio button mail is checked, because the same is what we are showing it in the UI after we click on this button. This is the example of Ajax. So this is how we do Ajax control. If you notice here, before we even try to interact with the element, we first made sure that the section is first visible. Using this WebDriver wait, we have used expected conditions dot presence of element located. Either you use a web element or you can use by variable. It is fine. And after it is visible, then you proceed with your other actions. Similarly, if you think, okay, maybe these elements are taking some time, again, we can use some other particular method. You can use presence of element, or you can use, so I'll show you one more example. So wait dot until, let me copy this part. So I'll show you another example. What all different options are there for you to use expected conditions. You can wait for, let's say if there is any alert, you can wait for that alert to be present. If any element is to be clickable, you can wait for that element to be clickable. Or if you're going to check some element, wait for it to get selected first. And again, as I discussed earlier, if you want to first have the frame visible and then switch to a specific frame, then you can use any of these 4 commands. So there are so many different options available. Then if you want to check that whether a text is present in a particular element, you can use that. If you want to check if a title is containing some specific subtext, what you want to check, that also we can find out to ensure that we are on the right page, or the URL contains some particular thing, or the URL has to be some value, or visibility of element. So there are so much multiple options we have in this expected conditions dot. So you can use any of those to achieve our scenario, right? So that's all about this particular question. How do we handle the Ajax controls? Now the next question is, how can you take a screenshot of some particular, any particular step or anything when you're doing any action in Selenium with your test case execution? How do you take a screenshot? So this is a very important topic actually, because what manual testers would want from automation team, or what the automation team themselves would want to have, is that some repository of a proof that this is what has happened in the entire session. This was the reason, and this is the screenshot of when the test case got failed. So it's simple. You just have to create one utility method called taking screenshot, and then you have to call that method in your catch clause. So I think I have implemented this catch clause here, right? Let's say try catch. Whenever you're having any test case, right, if you get any failure, you will be getting some exception encountered because it's not visible or there is something gone wrong. That time itself, you would want to call this particular method called get screenshot. Of course, this is the same method I'm trying to show it to you all, but just imagine a scenario where you're doing this @test annotation and you have got the catch clause here. You would want to call this get screenshot method so that the screenshot is captured at whatever path is mentioned in this get screenshot. And even this we can customize. We can give a path here. Not the path, we can give a file name. What is the exact file name we would want? So that file name we can append it here, right? So this is how you're going to use this get screenshot method. So let me first show you what is get screenshot method, which I've created here. So to start off, I'm not going to again, make it more confused here. So I'll do one thing. I'll just create from scratch. I'll create another method. So just ignore this for the time being. Just say take screenshot, right? So we are going to use take screenshot. We are just creating a method so that I can explain you how it is to be done. So now you're just going to say with driver, we are going to say get screenshot as, right? This is what you're going to do. So this is what you're going to do, driver.get screenshot as, and this particular screenshot will be of type file. So just say output type dot and just select file, right? Just select file. That's it. This is what you need to just remember or do when you try to take a screenshot. And this will automatically suggest you that you have to implement or add a cast to this particular type. So when you just say add cast to driver, it is automatically giving you take screenshot. This is the interface. So it is, we don't have this method available with the driver. So we are casting it with take screenshot. And with this, it will be able to access the get screenshot as method. And if you just do a mouse over, yes, you can see this is returning a file. So we are going to create a file object like this, right? And now we want to make this particular file move to a location in our project folder so that we can simply store at what location whatever we are giving to this particular method. So we are going to use file utils dot, and this is having a method called move file. So here you can copy your source file and you can make a new file with whatever path you're going to give. So you want to give a path of your current project and then navigate till your maybe a specific path. Maybe you can create another folder here, or if you want, you can capture it within the pkg package. So I'm going to say this one, system dot get property. Why I'm saying get property here? Because I want to get the user's current directory, and on that I want to add the location from src. We have got it till selenium sample. Now we want to get from src till pkg. So till pkg, and then the file name. So you'll say screen1 dot png. That is all we want to do. Right? We have added the complete file path. So it's going to ask you to handle some exceptions. So you can surround with try catch or you can use throws. But always the good thing to use is try catch, because here and there itself we are going to handle the exception right away in take screenshot method. And that's it. You have handled the exception and you can put this kind of a line in your method. This is all what you need to do to take a screenshot, right? So this is a duplicate method. I don't need it. I just wanted to explain you on how to create that method. So once this get screenshot method is created, now you want to call it. So I have already called it in my current test case so that I can show you all. So let me delete this particular screenshot which is already captured, and let me show from the scratch. And now let me run this program. It will also capture the screenshot. So like this, you can call this reusable method and capture it when you get a failure, and so that in case of failure, the screenshots get captured. Or even in the case of pass also, you can capture the screenshot. So it has passed. And now let's refresh this project. You can look at this now that it has captured the screenshot.png. Let's open it. And there you go. It has captured the screenshot successfully. So if I expand it, you can see that whatever we have done as a final action, it has captured the successful part of the test case, and the screenshot is captured in a specific path. So this is how we take a screenshot and capture in Selenium. And the last question which we are going to talk about in this particular session is what are data provider, why it is useful, and what are the different ways of giving a data provider. So let's explain this with an example. So a data provider is required if we want to execute a same test case with different sets of data. And we have a provision of data provider in Selenium using testng class. And in testng, again, we are having two ways to do it. So there are two ways to do it. Using testng in Selenium. So let's look at both in this session. The first one is data provider. There is a method we are going to create called data provider. With the usage of data provider, we can achieve the data iterations. And the second one is parameters in our testng class and parameter tag. So when I say parameter tag, means like this tag in testng.xml. So testng is such an important thing, concept in Selenium, that you have to master it before you go for the interview. There are so many questions which will be asked in testng. So don't worry about that. I'm going to create one separate session only on testng and only on Maven and page object model separately. These were the questions which I thought would be important together as a whole for 2 to 3 years experience. That's why I've taken this specific topic of data provider. Right, now parameters in testng class and parameter tag in testng.xml. It's a conjunction of both of them. And first one is only data provider we have to use. So let's look at both the ways. This is allowing us to use data iterations, that is same test case to be done with multiple sets of data. So let's look at that. So I have created again one class already, that is testng1, and there is a data provider I've created here. So there's again like an annotation. like how you use @test, we are going to use @data provider. It's a data provider method. I've given a name to it like provide the data, and I'm creating an object with whatever data iterations I want to do it. So it's a two-dimensional array here, right? So I'm creating a two-dimensional array here of type object. So object, of course, can store multiple types of element, right? I don't want it to specifically store only string or only integer or boolean or whatever other types, right? I want it to store any value. So I can have any kind of data types in my iteration. So this is the first iteration. With this curly brace, this is the first value, zeroth value of this array. It's a two-dimensional array. So this is the first value, and this is the second value, right? And again, it has got two parts, first one and second one. So there are two rows here. This is the first row, this is the second row, and then there are two columns here, first column and second column. So for these two columns, this is the first row and this is the second row. This is how you have to understand. This is the first iteration of the row and this is the second row. That is why it is a two-dimensional array. Number of rows here is 2. Number of columns here also are 2. But we cannot write this way in syntax, so I just wanted to show you all. Columns here too would have to be also mapped to whatever method you're going to use. So I'll explain that. Firstly, you have these two rows with two columns data, and you are returning this in your data provider method is returning back to your calling method. So there has to be some method which is going to consume this data or call this data provider, right? So that is going to be our @test annotation. If you look at this part here, so I have commented out currently because I was using in my other example of parameters. So let me use this data provider like this. This is how we are going to use our data provider. And this may belong to some groups as well, like sanity, functional, end-to-end, modular. And we are having the name of the data provider given like this way in double quotes. So the name here we've given is provide data. So we have mentioned the data provider name as provide data, right? So it is accepting two parameters here because we are giving two values, right? Two columns here. So we have to map in this method exactly two parameters. It cannot have less, it cannot have more. It should be exactly same, right? And we are going to use these values also. So username here will be Srini, search key will be Selenium. And what test case I'm trying to do is we are logging in with Srini as a username, and we are searching for this particular keyword that is Selenium here. So that is a search key. So if you look at the example I've taken example of google.com as a simple example. So I've launched the google.com. So if you look at my properties file here, I'm launching google.com. So I'm just accessing it through properties file, right? So I'm using get property method here, and I'm just launching the google.com. So you might be thinking that where is that we have basically used those initialization part, etc. Because we are extending the base class. Remember I told you all that in the base class we have all the things what we require to be done. That is have the initialize method, have the get property method defined, so that we just have to use this get property method to access the property files value, right? So we are using that concept here. We are extending the base class here. It's like a proper framework example, right? And we have before method and after method where we are making them available in some groups as well, the same groups. They have to belong to the groups, whatever you have for the test case, all the test cases, because then only for all the groups of test cases, this method are going to be applicable, before method and after method, right? Here as well, if you see, we are using get property Chrome driver path, right? And where is this application? Yeah, so we are launching the application as a part of test case. That is why we have commented out this line, right? Now we are launching the application. We have just printing out that this is the logged in username, and we are just saying this is a search key. So we are going to go to google.com. So we're going to say google.com, right? This is a search text bar where we are going to get the XPath, that is the area label equal to search, and then we are going to send key this search key whatever you've got from the user. So let's say if I say Selenium, right? So I want to get whatever has been given by the user as a search criteria, and this particular next line, if you see dot click, means whatever list of things we are seeing here, we want to select the first value from the lookup list. So I'm going to select Selenium. So once we get this output, then I'm going to get the title. That is why I'm saying page title driver.get title. That is the entire test case all about. So we want to do this for two data iterations. One with user Srini, search criteria Selenium, user Srinivas, and search criteria Java. So let's run this program with the first method, that is using data provider, and let's see what is the output. So it's going to launch the browser. Okay. So the first test part is done. It has printed the page title. We are going for the second part. Java, yes, and we have got the title, Java Google search. So these are the two data iterations which we had, and if you see here that it has got three test cases. So we had one additional test case. It did not do anything specifically. I'll show you that this one, test two. That is why initially it just launched the blank browser without doing anything. This was the first test case, this was the second test case, and this was the third test case, two iterations, right? We had two iterations for this test case itself because it is using data provider. And with two data iterations set what we have given, it has done the action, right? This was the first way of doing it. Now the other way to do it is using parameters one. So we have this annotation at the rate parameter. So for that reason, I am going to just comment out this part and going to close it. Of course, you can include the groups here as well. So if you're running from testng.xml, ensure that you have this comma groups also included here. Since I'm running directly from here, yeah, I think I might be running from there. So let me do one thing. Let me include this groups as well here. So now it could be a part of any group, whatever we are including in testng.xml. But since it belongs to all the groups, it will surely run. Right. So I don't want to run this test case. So there is a enabled. We have one enabled equal to false. So this test case will not run now. If you don't mention anything, it is by default understood that it is going to be run, or enabled is equal to true. Since you've made as enabled is false, only this will run now. Right. So we are using at the rate parameters annotation now instead of data provider. Data provider have already commented. And here you're giving two parameters, username and search key. These are the two values, two columns actually. And now let's go to testng.xml. So we are having this parameter tag added in our testng.xml saying name equal to username and name equal to search key. This exact username and search key now I've already given in my testng1.java. If you look at this at the test username and search key. And again, I need to have two columns, that is two parameters accepted, string username and string search key, which will map to these two values. So let's look at the parameter syntax again in testng.xml. We are going to define this at the suit level. And we are saying parallel equal to methods mean multiple methods will be executed in parallel. Okay. In case if you have any dependency between the method, you don't go for parallel equal to method, just simply remove it. If in case you have any dependency. Right. Now, if you have this parameter, then name equal to username, and then you give the value. Like, see how we have given the value here. We had given the value with this way, right? As a part of that object array. But in testng.xml, we are going to give specifically an attribute called value equal to, within the double quotes, give the value and then close the tag. So this is how you are going to have two different parameters. One is username, one is search. Now you might be noticing one important thing here, that we can just have one value for one parameter. If you cannot add the same parameter again with the same name, because it will become duplicate in your testng.xml. That is why comparing to parameters implementation for your testng1 compared to this parameters implementation, this data provider is much more efficient, because here you can have multiple data iterations. If you can see here, for the same username, I can have so many data iterations with this comma separated like this. Okay. But compared to this, parameters is just giving you one value for one parameter. It is not allowing more than one. You can just have one unique username, one unique parameter name, and that having one value. If you want to override the value, what you can do is within the test, you can have one more same parameter added. because this is at a different level, at a test level. So when you define such another same parameter name equal to username here, whatever value you're going to give here at the test level, that will take a precedence over this suit level. So here Srini will be considered, not Srinivasan. So here the username value is going to be considered as Srini and not Srinivasan, because I've overridden the importance of it in this test level, right? And here you can see we are calling this as test 1, and we are invoking test ng1 class, right? And we are also going to run test 2. Test ng demo also will be executed. So test ng demo also will be executed. So if you want to exclude that from happening, we can remove this here. So it will run only one test case now, that is test 1, right? So let's run this now, and it is going to include username as Srini, and it is going to have search key as core Java, because that is the search key value. It's there only at the suit level. There is no parameter called search key at the test level. So let's go back to test ng1. So it's not going to take it from here now. We can keep it as it is. We are not using it. We are now using @parameters annotation. So let's check out what is the username and what is the search criteria. So I'll run it now from testng.xml. Run as testng suite. So it's launching the browser. So Srini is logged in and has searched core Java, and it has selected the first value from that auto lookup list, which is core Java interview questions. And that is the title being printed. If you see here, logged in is Srini and search criteria is core Java, because it has overridden that value of Srinivasan at this test level as Srini. So this is how you can use the testng.xml with the usage of parameter tag. And I've also shown you on how to use data providers. So these are the two ways you can use it. Now, I just want to mention one more thing here, and this I'll be explaining in detail when I take the framework sessions. That is the data provider you can use to much better effect, not only with this hard coding part of object array, you can also get the data from Excel. Get the data from Excel using Apache POI. I'll be creating a session on Apache POI as to how to retrieve the data from Excel or how to write the data from Excel. Once you retrieve the data from Excel, store this, get data from Excel and store it in two-dimensional object array as seen above. That's it. So if you don't want to basically hard code it into a object two-dimensional array, you get the data read from the Excel sheet, store it into two-dimensional array, and just return that array. That's it. So we'll be creating the utility methods when we look at the Apache POI session for reading and writing the data from Excel. And we will be getting the data from Excel and storing into such kind of an array, and then return that array values to our data provider, this @test annotation, by using this data provider equal to provide data. So I hope you found this session very useful, and I have covered all the important interview questions which could be asked for a 2 to 3 experienced professional. So do share with your friends, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, I would strongly recommend go ahead and subscribe to it. You'll be getting a lot of upcoming videos on framework level interview questions, testng, page object model, and I'll be also creating different elementary sessions on Selenium Grid, Jenkins, how to have the code versioning using GitHub, and I'll be having separate session on the other concepts also. So do subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much.